Welcome to NatureHacker Mind. I am NatureHacker. So we have some great news. I was able to make a song, and I was able to do everything I needed to, and here it is. Take a quick listen. Welcome to NatureHacker Mind. This is NatureHacker. So I hope you enjoyed my new song that I just made. That is my first song. It's called One and Done. And it was just named that because I just wanted to make it quick and just get one done. So I did. I use the program Caustic. It's an iOS app, and it is Caustic 3. And what I did from there was, hold on one second. So I got an app called Audio Share, and I was able to make this song on Caustic 3, then export it to Audio Share as a WAV file. Then I am using right now an app called Cute Cut, where I can make movies. And I opened the audio file from Audio Share into this current app, Cute Cut. So here we are, and now I am officially a music maker. And I'm going to make a YouTube video of just a YouTube channel of just my music. And that channel will be called, it's already existent, and it is called Spinsmith, Spinsmyth, like a myth. Spinsmith, that is my musician name, so check that out. I will let you know when I upload things to there. So, that is the future of my life, to be a musician. Not that I'm a real musician, as I talked in my last video. Being a trance music maker is like being a composer. What you do is you manipulate the sounds. A composer uses his little magic wand to manipulate the sound and say when he wants a sound and when he wants it to end and what he wants the, amplitude or pitch to be or whatnot. And so he doesn't make any of the sound, but he puts the sound together, and he is the composer, and so is the trance music composer. You take beats, you edit the sound, you tell it when to play, and you develop and you build a song. So that is what I am, a music composer, trance music. So, other things that I did today, I bought goldfish, real goldfish, and I put them in an aquarium. I found an aquarium tank. My neighbor had it out by the road, so I walked by and picked it up and brought it to my place. And I've had it sitting in my backyard for several days with water in it and dirt in it. So I put dirt in it as well as water. And my thought was originally that I wanted to catch algae. I wanted to catch natural algae, which sounds impossible, but I know that it's possible because there is native algae and native sea plants, even though I don't live next to an ocean. There's still freshwater seaweeds and things like that, and that's what I wanted to catch. So I wanted a underwater garden, if you will. Seaweeds are some of the most healthy plants that you can possibly eat. They contain omega-3 fatty acids. In some cases, they contain vitamin B12. In some cases, they contain the amino acid, or I don't know what it's called, diamino, something like that, but taurine. Taurine is a very important amino acid. Your body can make it from the amino acid cysteine. So it's always good to make sure you're getting enough cysteine, because that's what glutathione is made out of, and it's also what taurine is made out of. One point I was eating a primarily raw food vegan diet, and I could tell that my heart was beating weirdly, and in the lab I studied, it's actually interesting that I mention this now. I studied, our lab studied diastolic, a protein. We studied a protein that caused heart failure. It caused diastolic heart failure. Basically, the heart would get just balloon up, and it wouldn't be able to contract strong enough to pump the blood. So, you know what? It's very interesting, because I had a feeling that researchers are not just researching things, but they're also being researched. And so I had the feeling that they might be infecting us with things. One time they gave us cookies that had this really weird red frosting on it. And it just seemed like blood to me, and they made sure that we all ate some of these cookies. They forced us to. And I was very suspicious. I felt like they could have put, blood in it when the blood had virus. And so what happens in the lab is that we create viruses with our gene of interest. So if we wanted to simulate a genetic phenotype is what they're called, a genetic way that the organism is, a genetic defect, for example, you would put a certain gene into a virus, basically a knockout gene. So this gene would knock out the gene in the organism. So you put it in the virus, and then you infect cells. In our case, I was a cell culture guy. I took live animals like rats and chicken embryos and mice and things like that, and I removed certain organs, like the heart, for example, and I took it and digested it with enzymes so that I could get individual heart cells. And then what I did with those individual heart cells is I put them on petri dishes. And so what we would have is we would have a layer of heart cells on petri dish. And so then what the postdoc researchers would do is to use the virus that has the knockout gene in it and infect the cells, and then they would study the cells and see what the effect that virus had on the cells. Now, what it turns out was probably happening was the people above us were using us, the people of the lab, as lab rats, and infecting us with the same virus, with the same knockout gene, and seeing how it affected us as people, as human lab rats. So that is what I was thinking was happening back when I was in the lab, but just recently I stumbled across some research on none other than my favorite chemical, parathion, organophosphate pesticide. The reason it's my favorite chemical at this point is because I have been studying it, because I believe that Scalia was poisoned with it. It's called the mother-in-law poison. It's a very easy poison to obtain and to infect people with. So I've been doing research on how Scalia died, and I believe that is how he died. And looking deeper, I discovered, or hypothesized, that they are using that same agent, parathion, in the chemtrails as a soft kill. So they are killing us with parathion in the chemtrails. And so I found out that tryptophan and iron and nitrate is what can help us to detox parathion, as well as the plant datura. Taking datura in small quantities will also help the body be able to compensate for the parathion poisoning that all of us chronically have. Now, what was interesting was I was reading about research into human effects of parathion, and it turns out that one of their case studies was a man who was hired as a scientist to study parathion's effect on plants. And so, while he was doing his little busy work for the machine, being a cog in the machine, doing his little busy work, unbeknownst to him, these scientists were studying him and knowing that he wasn't wearing gloves and he wasn't wearing proper safety. So they did that on purpose. They made it so that he wasn't using proper safety on purpose, so that he would be exposed to it, and they were studying him, and that is exactly what happened. They are reporting how he wasn't using proper safety. They knew he wasn't, and they probably told him not to. They didn't teach him the right stuff. And they reported all the symptoms that he had, and they even had him in with his doctor, and they were getting information from his doctor of him visiting the doctor and what complaints he was having. So that tipped me off, like, wow, us as researchers in the lab, we are not just researching, we're doing busy work. The real research is being done on us, human research. So that I had discovered. Now, where this goes is that we were working on a protein that caused diastolic heart failure. Now, when I went on a raw food diet, and presumably the reason is because I wasn't getting enough taurine to compensate, my heart started going in diastolic insufficiency, where I could feel my heart ballooning and it wasn't pumping the blood out enough. So what I think happened is they infected us with this virus, but the virus didn't, it wasn't strong enough to cause the disease without other factors, one of those factors being the lack of taurine. So I went back to eating meat and dairy and things. Dairy has a lot of taurine, and my heart went back to normal. So a long path there, but as far as that story goes, but taurine is important, and taurine is in seaweed, so it is important to grow seaweed. But today I had the idea, I don't know where the idea came from, to actually grow fish. I have this tank and it's got water in it. Why not go and add a couple fish? So I went to the pet store and I bought 3 little goldfish. They cost me $3 each, which I felt was kind of expensive, but I guess in the scheme of things it wasn't that expensive. So hopefully I got different sexes so that they can breed. So I put those 3 fish in my tank, and the tank had dirt in it already, and I put some dried wood in there. I put some rocks in there. I put some kale, and I cut some grapefruit up, put those in there. And I noticed that there was some mosquito larvae swimming around, so hopefully all is well, and my fish will grow and multiply. But I feel like that is a good source of complete protein, and I suppose carnitine, that's a very important amino acid, is typically only actually gotten from red meat, so fish probably won't have carnitine. But I feel that when the method that I'm using is a no change technique, I might do partial water changes once in a while, but what I want to happen is, this is an outdoor tank, it's open to the atmosphere, so mosquitoes will go in there and lay eggs, and so the fish will be able to eat the larva, and so what I'm going to do is just hope that all happens, and that the wood that I put in will be able to allow enough surface area for gas exchange, so that I don't need a little waterfall or whatever they do. So it'll just be a low-tech tank is one way to call it, but a no-change water tank, so that the algae, what will happen is the fish poop out ammonia that they make from eating insects and from food and whatever. And I'm also going to put in little bits of food that I make for myself, including refried beans, rice, oatmeal, things like that. I will also feed them, so I'll throw in some leafy greens here and there as well. But what they do is they convert proteins, amino acids, into ammonia, and they poop that out into the water. Now, what happens is bacteria or plants, things like this, will convert that ammonia into something called nitrite, which is it's oxidized. It's ammonia that's been partially oxidized. But this nitrite is also toxic to the fish, so then what needs to happen is more bacteria or more plants or whatnot is needed to convert the nitrite into nitrate. Nitrate is basically a fully oxidized form of nitrogen. So this is less harmful to the fish, but still it needs to be removed. And there are some bacteria called denitrifying bacteria, and these bacteria will actually reduce, reduction reaction, the nitrates into nitrogen gas. So it's kind of a weird process. You have ammonia that is oxidized to nitrite, which is oxidized to nitrate, but then that is reduced to nitrogen gas. You would think that it would be oxidations all the way down, but there's a partial reduction, it seems like. So all I can do is hope that all of those microorganisms find their way into my tank, which would be possible because it is outdoors and it's open to the air and it's open to bugs and whatnot. So we can hope for that. I'm keeping the tank in the shade. The temperature today was 75 degrees. And goldfish are quite hardy. They can live up to upper 70s, so I should be okay. I'm keeping it in the shade, and hopefully it can make it through the summer. And in the winter, they seem to do fine. They can live even only a couple degrees above freezing, so that should be doable in the winter. So just having a tank out in the backyard in the shade, and hopefully all I have to do is replace water from evaporation. So I feel that might be a good, cheap way to create protein. I mean, as far as humans go, insects are edible by us, but they're obviously not ideal. If we can convert insects into fish, the fish are much better for us to eat. So in a survival situation, a great thing to do would be to convert your pool into a pond and stock it with goldfish and other types of fish. And that way you would have meat. Basically, the insects would find their way into your pond and they would feed your fish, and you would get meat absolutely for free for the price of mosquitoes flying around. So that would be a great way to be able to get meat for your family, is to turn your swimming pool into a fish pond. So that is what I was doing mostly today. Now I can go on to a story, I suppose, from my past. This story is going to be the end of my time at the Cult Faith Christian Church, and I'm going to tell you about the moment where I realized that I needed to leave this church. So I had stumbled across a website maybe a few months before this, and it was a website about former members of the church that I was in, and their stories. And I was very intrigued about this, the people that had been at the church before me, and their stories, and that they left and why they left. And I was reading these stories, and it was very, very interesting. I would stay up. I had insomnia, but I would stay up late at night reading these stories in my bed, right next to, because we had about 6 people from church living in my house. It wasn't my house, it was a house we rented together, 6 of us in there. And here I am late at night reading about people who have left the church. It feels evil to do, to read about people who left, because we were brainwashed to think that the people who left were bad people. But I would read their stories, and a newspaper article came out in the university newspaper, talking about the church that I was in, and how people thought it was a cult, and stories of some of the people that left. And one of the stories was one of my friends who had left, and her name was Hillary Hirsch. And what happened was, I was president of a club, and this club was the liaison between the church and the university, because the church had already been kicked off of the university. So now, in order to recruit college students, we needed a club to interact with the college so that we were official, even though the church was banned. And I knew that this was odd and that this was wrong, that, our club was basically just, our club wasn't really there to do anything except for to be a front for our church, so that our church could reserve rooms on campus for the church. And I knew that this was kind of odd. Okay, so I was the president of the club, and we were all students, and we all had jobs, and Hillary was the treasurer of the club, and she had a full-time job. She was a manager at Jimmy John's, and she was our club treasurer, and she was going to school, and she was in ROTC, and it was just so much for her. And we all had so much going on. I was working at Olive Garden. I was taking organic chemistry, very hard classes. I was president of Wildcats for Christ. I was volunteering roughly 20 hours a week for my church. So between that and part-time job and very hard school, it was just way too much for all of us, and we were all struggling from insomnia and not being able to have enough time to do well in our classes and everything. And one day, all of a sudden, my pastor comes up to me, and he's like, "We need to talk." I sat down and talked to him, and he said, "What did you do?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "To Hillary." I was like, "Nothing, why?" And he's like, "She left the club notebook on my doorstep, and she's gone. She left the church." I was like, "You're kidding me." He's like, "No." He's like, "What did you do?" I was like, "I didn't do anything. I don't know. I mean, I was always really nice to her." Anyway, they needed to throw somebody under the bus, so they blamed me that Hillary left. So that was my fault. Now, fast forward maybe 6 months, and this article in the school newspaper talks about this girl and her story of being in this church. And it turns out it wasn't me, the reason why she left. The pastor had basically mentally abused her and just basically spiritually abused her, saying that she has demons, and that her dad was a bad person because he was a military dad, and she should leave ROTC, and basically just kept her in his house until she would repent. And she's like, "I don't have anything to repent of." And so it's this whole big fiasco, and they talked about it in the newspaper. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I was shocked that they treated her like that. And then they treated me like that, blaming me for her leaving when it was obviously their abuse that caused her to leave. When I read this, I was shocked, and I was reading through the comments on the article, and there was a lot of people commenting, some people from the church, other people giving their stories on why they left. And at first I stood up and stood up for the church, and I was like, basically I could understand where they were coming from and what they did or whatnot, but by the end, I was convinced that, this is a bad church. I'd always kind of had my hesitations about the church, but took this was the last straw, and I was like, you know what, this place is bad. I'm leaving after I graduate. Or not after I graduate. I was leaving after that school year was over. And I was going to leave before that, but that I by the end of the comments on that article, my comments changed to people talking about how there's been no complaints to the university from students, because you have to complain while you're a student, but Hillary had already graduated, and all of the people who left usually left after they graduated. Once they And the church didn't show its true colors until after you graduated. So people who left while they were still students never felt obliged to complain. Only the people who were around after they graduated. But I was in a unique situation because I had already graduated, but I have gone back to school. So I was a current student at that time, even though I had been in the church for probably 6 years. And so at the end of the comments, I was like, hey, I'm still a student. I'm going to complain to the university. So I became the first complaint, the first official complaint to the university about this church. So time goes on. I leave the church, and my pastor meets with me, and I'm just like, I'm leaving church. And he's like, but you just had a prophecy given to you by John Steele that said that you would never leave the faith. And I was basically like, well, I'm not leaving the faith, I'm just leaving this church. I'm going to a different church. And he's like, tell me what church you're going to, and if we call them and they say that you're going to a different church now and they don't know what church you're going to, then we're going to consider that you basically are lost and that you're going to hell. And I was just like, whatever, I don't care, I don't want you to know where I am. So anyway, yeah, I left, and then I was still a part of that 6-man house. So yeah, that was awkward for a while. You know, they had people over, and whenever people came over and saw me, they just got this look on their face, like they scrunched their eyebrows down, they squinted their eyes, and they made their mouth into a face like, oh, this person is a deserter, or this person is a traitor, is the type of face that they made. And I told them how I was going to another church that actually cared about homeless people, and that I was helping homeless, because from the very beginning I felt like we should be helping homeless people instead of trying to help college students. You know, we weren't really helping college students, we were just browbeating them and trying to make them convert and join our church. I was like, why don't we actually help the homeless, like something that Jesus would do? And they're always like, no, our calling is to college students. So at this point, the thought in my mind was, I'm leaving this church for a homeless ministry, for a church that actually helps homeless people. So that was the thought in my mind, and that is what I did. And so yeah, I finished out that finished out that semester in that house, and basically at the end of the semester, the other guys in the house were supposedly very kind Christians. They actually kicked me out. They're like, you have to leave since you're no longer a member of the church. And not very Christianly of them, but I can understand that because I was of the same mindset. And he had kicked out other people of the house when they left the church. So very cruel, very unusual, but they're fascists in that church. They didn't realize it. So anyway, I left, and my life got so much better. Just like Hillary, when she left, she had all of that responsibility fall off of her. Same with me. I was able to do better in work and in school, and actually have a little bit of free time and be able to rest and nap and to improve my health and whatnot. So that is all for today, Thursday, February 10th, 2016. Thanks for joining Nature Hacker Mind. I'll see you tomorrow.